One of my earliest memories of her enterprising endeavors was when I was 3 and she was 4. She decided that we would go around the neighborhood offering for a few pennies to rake up maple seeds. This was springtime in Zanesville, Ohio. I should say that Sister Mary Andrew, known in the family as Mary, was the oldest by 10 months, and so she was the leader. And she decided we would do this with our little rakes and our buckets. And we were on our 3rd house, the first 2 having said no thank you, when we got our first yes. And we were happily raking away, and suddenly our mother arrived. So this early initiative was short-lived, but perhaps prophetic.
Well, Mary's a seamstress. She's a very skilled sewer, so she can make beautiful clothes. But she tends more to make craft items. And she sells them twice a year and gives the money to the United Way, which always has a drive at the college, and does very, very well.
She also has a tremendous gift for music. She loves music, and I know music is a kind of central part of her life and her prayer. She's wonderful liturgically, planning liturgical celebrations and integrating music and prayer in not just in liturgy, but even in, say, just prayer services.
It's a funny combination because she's highly intellectual and very involved in things like getting technology for the college, and yet she's making coasters and jewelry bags. So it's a nice, interesting, but unusual combination of interests and characteristics.
One of the ways I think Mary Andrew has been able to get the best out of people is that she's a consummate teacher. And what I mean by that is not only is she brilliant, but I think her story as the president is really the story of how intelligence and love come together. And all of us know that if we love someone or we love something, it's much easier for us to get along. And Mary Andrew's intelligence has always been tempered by the requirements of love.
In 1966, I had the opportunity to meet Sister Mary Andrew. I was a student in her inorganic chemistry class. And she had the great skill and ability to take a very difficult and complex subject and make it real and understandable to even a disinterested student like me. And she made chemistry come alive. But more importantly than that, she took interest in each student to make sure that they enjoyed their college experience. She has taken that skill and that ability to understand very complex things, but communicate them in understandable ways to all of us over all of the years that she has served as both a teacher, as an administrator, and as the president of this university that has made it what it is today.
You know, she's taught me how to deal with people. She's taught me how to deal with tough issues. But her vision for the institution, her challenge to me to be the best, was probably the richest experience I could ever have. So looking back my 5 years of working with her, she was tough, she was challenging, and I think we both were able to rise to a whole new level together because of how we fed off of each other. I've never had that experience with anybody else.
You really cannot be in the community doing anything where you're trying to bring about change where she isn't going to pop up somewhere. It could be in the halls of Congress, it could be down in the State House, it could be something related to the United Way, it could be at the football game. I mean, if one day I went to see the Blue Jackets play and she dropped the puck at the hockey game, I wouldn't be surprised. You just expect her to turn up. She is just kind of omnipresent. She has been a force in the community in a whole variety of ways.
Sister Mary Andrew has an incredible ability to involve people from very diverse backgrounds and interests from the leadership of the city of Columbus, and has been able to gather their interest in this institution because of its fundamental quality of its values.
Because the kind of education that we've been able to deliver over the last 30 years or so is an excellent kind of education. It's rare, in fact, in academic circles. And she's spent her life making sure that it's open to everybody, particularly those people who wouldn't been able to afford it.
She has an uncanny sense of where higher education is moving. That it's like she almost gets there before anybody else does.
What she understood way ahead of everybody else was the impact of technology. I mean, she was light years ahead of her colleagues in the small private colleges, and never mind the big ones, in understanding how technology would revolutionize the learning process. The other presidents were concentrating on the equipment. How do I wire my campus? And Andy was saying, long before anybody else, what are you going to use this stuff for? That was her contribution.
I mean, she's fundamentally changed in the 22 years that she's been. She's not the same person that she was when she started. She's, as we'd all want to be, better as a result of a process in a time. And I think what makes her so good, and indeed we could use the term great, is the fact that in developing herself so much, she's also developed the college and the community, and it's made a fundamental difference.
Well, I think being in Berkeley in the 60s had a lot of influence in her life. I think she was already very interested in politics before she went, but it was quite an eye-opening experience, and one that has probably led her to think a lot about liberty and students' rights and human rights and freedom of expression. It was a very growthful time for her. She was certainly on that campus in the chemistry department quite an oddity, both as a woman and as a woman dressed as a religious sister. But it was a very broadening experience for her.
In terms of her involvement in politics, she shows up and is a big advocate for higher education, and she'll call you on things. I mean, there have been times when I've complained about the costs of higher education, and she gets right in my face and says, well, you don't understand, John, you know, and so, I mean, she's not afraid to challenge you.
Well, the great thing she did was to take on the bullies of the Department of Education single-handedly and shoot them down in public. And she was the great hero, and took them on and beat them at their own game and then some, and gave lots of other people courage, which was probably the most important thing she did.
As a university president, I feel, thanks to Mary Andrew, a responsibility to carry the message of private higher education into the legislatures, into the state offices, into the representatives' offices, and into the national sphere. I didn't know that before I worked with Mary Andrew.
I think Mary thought about becoming a nun because she was very impressed with the Dominican sisters she had in school, with their intelligence, commitment to education and quality education. And she and our own family grew up within an atmosphere of service and focus on the importance of service.
It's difficult, I think, to be a college president and to live in community. I think that's very hard. Many college presidents don't live in community, but she has given herself to that, made it, I think, a priority, that her relationship with the sisters would not suffer because of her professional relationship with them.
Mary Andrew is really a Dominican, and she's really a Catholic. It's part of her character. The first and last thing she expects of the faculty is that they know what the mission statement is. It's like her being. She's incorporated it so much into who she is that it's just second nature to her.
She answers to a higher power. We all do, but she recognizes it, and she doesn't recognize it in a informal way. It's a centering of her life, and it's actually meant something to me because it's a very important part of my life, and she's been able to, as a person I admire, she's been able to demonstrate that faith and that confidence will lead you in the right direction.
We started traveling almost as soon as I left. I went to Ann Arbor to work at Eastern Michigan, and within 2 years, we were on the road. It was just wonderful. We worked well. I do all the driving. She does all the piloting. She takes all the pictures. I handle all the money. I make all the reservations. She looks up the things we're supposed to see and why we're supposed to see them, so that we're a good team. We could put this whole show on the road if we wanted to.
Last spring, Mary was honored at Albertus Magnus College, my alma mater, at commencement with an honorary doctorate. My 3 adult children and Mickey's daughter, who is a student at Brown, were able to meet in New Haven and help honor Mary. And their sole motivation for doing this was their love for their Aunt Mary. So she is a beloved aunt and a beloved sister.
You know, one of the personal characteristics of Mary Andrew that has been so valuable, I think, to all the people who have worked with her, is that when you work as closely as that administrative team works over a period of time, you'll invariably come into tragedy and crises in the different families. And no matter how busy Mary Andrew was, she would always be there. Whether a child was sick, whether it was a special occasion for the family, she would always take the time.
She was very, very just wonderful to me when I had a diagnosis, and even took me to the hospital the morning of my surgery. We got up at 5 o'clock. She got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to drive me to the hospital. And I think probably the most poignant thing for me was before I went into surgery, I was on the gurney, and I said, I'd like a blessing. And it was the most wonderful, word of healing and comfort. What a gift. I told her she should go into hospital ministry when she retired, because I think she would just be so wonderful with people who are ill. Very consoling.
I think one of the most telling moments when I realized her true character and the individual grace which she had was last winter when she went to Washington to get an award. She spoke at the meeting, and she was so eloquent in her statement that, yes, she had done all the things they said she had in the introduction, but the time had come for other people to carry that on, and she really couldn't do any more. And it was a very human moment, because she regretted that she couldn't keep doing it. She did not want to quit. And I think it expressed everything about it. She's so very human, and yet so very strong. She's been just a lot of fun and inspiration and satisfaction and joy to have as a friend.